Okay, so we're recording, and so welcome to the Child's Voice Mainstream Parent Panel. I'm so glad everyone's here, and I'm really thankful for our participants. I'm Carrie Jackowitz. I'm the Special Services Coordinator at Child's Voice, and my job is to follow our alumni once they go back to their neighborhood schools and see how they're doing. And my job is also to work on parent education and help parents in any way possible to get ready to go to the mainstream and just be there to so you can ask questions, shoot me an email. I'm always here to help whatever I can do to support you. So tonight our two we're expecting one more panelist. I'm hoping she's going to come, but we have two panelists right now, and they are Alex and Katie. And so let me, can you share, Alex, will you go first and share your child's name, age, current grade, hearing loss of devices, and number of years in the mainstream?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. And so my daughter, Dahlia, um, is my child with hearing loss who went to Child's Voice. She is now 10 and in fourth grade, and she has been mainstreamed since first grade. So this is her fourth year of the mainstream. She has bilateral sensorineural hearing loss that slopes from mild to severe / profound. So it's quite a steep loss in both of her ears. She wears hearing aids, and I'm actually have to look at the name. She kind of recently got new hearing aids. They are Phonak Audio, and I'll talk about those later on when we get to the questions about sports and stuff because they are really great. And yeah, actually, Dahlia was lucky enough to have Carrie as her teacher back at Child's Voice, which was wonderful. And then we've now been lucky to have Carrie with us in the mainstream. So happy to be here tonight.
Thank you for being here. Okay, go ahead, Katie.
Hi guys, I'm Katie Schroeder. I am the parent of two Child Voice alumni. Molly is also the class of 2020 along with Dahlia. She is in fourth grade, and I have another one, Bo, who is a class of 2022, and he is in second grade. They both mainstreamed at first grade, so we're on year 4 and year 2 for both of them. Molly was born with a profound severe hearing loss. She is bilaterally cochlear implants, and we have Medell. And Bo was diagnosed with a mild hearing loss and then progressively lost it. And he is also bilaterally implanted with cochlear's Medell as well. And we also had Carrie for Molly, and Carrie follows both my children at our mainstream school as well.
I did, and I had a lot of fun doing it too. Well, the COVID years were definitely fantastic. That was really interesting to Zoom into classrooms. It was so surreal, but it was really interesting to be able to, I still was able to see almost everything I wanted to see while I was Zooming. Okay, so thank you for sharing a little bit about your kids. So let's start with, how did your child handle the transition to your neighborhood school? So I listed a bunch of different things that can come up as difficulties when you're transitioning, because you're changing from the small classroom sizes at Child's Voice to the larger mainstream classroom and more noise, and there's a lot of different things that can come up. So maybe can you talk about the top 2 things maybe that arose?
So I'll go with one. Bo is my structure schedule. We call him our calendar kid. So when he mainstream and went from a very small structured classroom at Child's Voice and went into a classroom of, 15, 20 kids, whatever it might be, he had a hard time, not with the classroom dynamic, but with the socialization, not raising your hand as much, kids just getting up and going to the bathroom. He's like, wait a minute, you didn't ask for that. Why aren't you doing this? He was used to the Child's Voice structure. So it was a harder transition with him to just go with the flow of some things and learn the dynamics of a new classroom, what you can and cannot do, what you need to ask for permission, not do. In terms of like background noise, we've been really good that in the start of our kids' mainstreaming, our hearing itinerant went in and worked with our teachers for like an hours at a time, talked about positioning by fans, by the hallway, by, tennis balls on the chairs and on the desk. And I think one like really good thing for us was that our hearing itinerant is very strong. We have a awesome dynamic together. We email, we text, we see her about in town. She knows my kids so well. There's so many things that she navigates, um, troubleshoots that I don't know about until the end of the day when my kids come home and tell me, Miss Graham did this, Miss Graham and I did this. And I have two kids there. Well, we took this sleeve and we switched with this kid to see if it was working. So, our two things were, going from a really structured classroom to kind of going to a larger classroom. Background noise really wasn't an issue from us. We addressed it right away at the front part of the school year, making sure that we had, all that, communicated and why it's going to be an issue and where to position was the best way to position while not making a focus on the kid. Well, Molly can't sit here. It's never even known. It's more set. This is just where Molly is going to sit, and this is why. A couple of things I just really quickly want to address on because I think CB does so well here is vocabulary and academics and independence. Child's Voice set our kids up for that. I mean, I remember back to P1 of the what do we call it? Remember we did you had to bring something for each letter of the alphabet every day. Show and tell.
Oh, show and
Miss
tell. Yeah.
Miss Elsa, man, that killed me every day. I'm like, what do I find with a Q? But it really helped structure their vocabulary and helped them to explain what it is and why it is this and things you do with it. So vocabulary, Child's Voice set them up with that. Like words they were doing, I'm like silo. I don't think I knew what a silo was until X grade. So some of these things you think are going to be a challenge, you don't even know, but Child's Voice has been setting them up for success back in EI. My couple of things.
Yeah, I agree with Katie. And hopefully, the experience that Katie and I have with our daughters is something that you all will never have. But their first year into the mainstream was the first year of the COVID shutdown, and actually, I think a lot of things really went well for Dahlia in that. Um, and there's some takeaways that I have from that. But Dahlia is shy by nature, partially because of her hearing loss, also because I think she's just shy. And so having this direct window into the teacher, and she could always hear the teacher perfectly. She could hear her classmates on Zoom, and she was able to learn, all of the routines and everything about school. So that actually, when she went in person, she actually felt very comfortable having had kind of an easy way to learn a lot of the systems. And so while I don't wish remote learning on anybody ever again, I do think, wow, what I learned from that is, I think the more, at least for my child, and personalities differ. So there's the hearing loss piece, which can be very similar, and then the personality piece can be very different. But for my daughter, I think having that ability to learn as much about the school as possible really helped her succeed when she actually went into the classroom in person. And Child's Voice does a lot of that with the mainstream experience. Our two daughters didn't really get much of that because COVID happened during that spring. But I think that's one thing that is so helpful. So while they may not be learning about their specific homeschool, they're learning about hearing classrooms in general. And I know that my daughter being able to access all of those little routines and things ahead of time was really helpful. So I think that, kind of learning about the homeschool as much as you can be really helpful. And it was for my daughter. I would say about the background noise, a lot of schools have one or two classrooms where they have partitioned walls. And so then they're sharing space. And so finding out about, if your classroom or if the first grade, for example, has one of those classrooms, like you want to know about that and make sure that your child is not in one of those noisy classrooms. And so we had one of those. They already knew that Dahlia shouldn't go into that classroom, but and our hearing itinerant is excellent as well, and did have an in-service for when Dahlia went in person in second grade. But I did find out, for example, they hadn't gotten the chair covers yet, or for the little tennis balls on the bottom of the. And so it turned, and it took them about a week to get those things. And so even when the team is amazing, there are still things that the parents need to follow up on to make sure are happening. Oh, and I will say one more thing, just to say, Molly talked about, or sorry, Katie talked about vocabulary. And I think the reading for me was huge. Child's Voice did such an amazing job in getting our kids reading. And then that was crucial for that first year of remote learning, that Dahlia had closed captioning and was able to read. And I think that that security that she had in her reading ability really helped her transition successfully.
That's really interesting. Yeah, the closed captioning is so important. Yeah. Okay. So, oh, well, I think we kind of talked about this. Did any issues arrive? Was there anything that you didn't expect in your first year? Well, besides COVID and remote learning, but was there anything that you thought, oh, we've got all this, and then something came up?
So Dahlia and Molly's first year was a little bit different because Molly was actually in person. We were one of those lucky school districts, in my opinion, that were in person, not all day. I think we started like half day and then we went up. But I think one of the challenging things was for me a little bit, as much as my hearing intent went in and prepped her teacher for this, and that. And I think Carrie will get where I'm going with this. Her teacher, we struggled a little bit with the mask and positioning towards Molly and stuff. So again, that was a little bit different. But what I quickly learned, and I think this translations not just to COVID and just to being your child advocate, is don't be afraid to email, call the teacher, get a hold of that hearing itinerant, even the principal, because it was her first year there. It was a very different year, it was a different learning curve, mask, clear mask, not clear mask. And I think that was just one thing that I had to, because my husband tends to think I'm a little neurotic sometimes and like, no, just let it play out, let it play. I'm like, no, I'm not letting this go too far where I just jumped in, say, hey, I don't think is working. So that was one of the COVID things for us is, I just had to be true to myself in the way I felt and what I felt was going to be best for Molly, because that was her first year was COVID, which was a little bit different.
In terms of surprises that I didn't expect, I I think so I knew going in my daughter was shy, and really she was very shy during the classroom piece of school. But she actually, it was a pleasant surprise. She actually made friends and interacted much better than I was expecting. And I think, again, with Child's Voice, there's so much focus on socialization. I remember Dahlia, and I don't know if Molly did this as well, but there were these little lunch groups where they would go and practice kind of social norms and chatting and small talk. And I think that kind of stuff really helped her a lot. And so it was just a really wonderful surprise that she, especially with the masks, that she wasn't lagging as far as behind as I maybe feared that she would in the social skills.
To add on to the social skills, Molly does not lack self-confidence or being social. That could be her downfall sometimes. But what I think, Bo, who is my other CV grad, he's my shyer, more reserved type guy. And I think one thing that helped us is we're a Wheaton family. getting into Wheaton sports, getting him around kids that he's going to be going to school with, getting to meet people. Yes, we have a lot of kids in our neighborhood and our street, not necessarily his age. So he tends to hang out sometimes with the older kids because that's Molly and that's her friends and that's his crutch and is kind of his safety blanket. So like it was me pushing him, hey, let's try this sport, let's try this activity, let's try going here, let's try meeting these kids. So when he did transition, he had some familiar faces, especially in that grade. I think that definitely helped him.
And I'll just jump in there after that and say, a lot of, well, at least our neighborhood schools do kind of kindergarten meetups or first grade meetups over the summer. And I think that is really helpful. One, again, just to have that social crutch, but also you can be there to help navigate those very first interactions with like, what's that on your head? Like, why do you have that on your ears? Um, and, sometimes depending on how I felt like my daughter was feeling, I would just sit there and like let her answer, or sometimes I would model and, and answer for her. And so not only was she feeling better that she was making friends and knowing familiar faces, but some of that stuff that's awkward for my daughter, and it's not awkward for all kids with hearing loss, but some of that stuff about explaining her hearing aids was already taken care of by the time that we got into school. And so, and they practiced that at Child's Voice, and so she knew what to say, and she was prepared for the questions, and had answers. Sometimes she needed some help getting through the answers, but she knew it, and she had gone over it, and that's another thing that Child's Voice does really well. And so kind of practicing that before they're in school on their own, at some kind of a meetup, can be really helpful.
So, and I don't know if this is anywhere else. I was just looking at my notes, but I think you touched on a great point there. Miss Melissa with Bo more so than Molly, because I feel like COVID got the best of us and they didn't get to do this, was make this is my hearing loss, this is my device book.
Mm-hmm.
And Miss Melissa did a phenomenal job with Bose. It was standout, hands down, awesome. And it showed so many things. And they practiced before he graduated. I handed it off to Molly or Bo's hearing itinerant. She worked with him, and then he did it to his entire class. Well, his teacher was so blown away with it that she set up for him to go to the other first grade classes and do it to all the classes, because you're not just with your class throughout the day. You're at recess and lunch together. And Molly was like, wait a minute, my book wasn't that great. So then Molly and her hearing itinerant made a book for her, and she did it in third grade again and in fourth grade again, and did it to all the students, because there's new students. There's students maybe that weren't there the first time you did it. So really making sure that everyone you're interacting with knows what they are and how important and how special and how awesome they are. So I think that's something really great. And I hope Miss Melissa still does it. And Carrie, if she doesn't, make her. But they're great pieces for them to take, and they're proud of it. And it has their picture and it has their family and it. Oh, my sister has this too. It's really nice for them to own that and be able to explain it and kind of read through it and do it every year. Just because they heard it one year doesn't really make sure that resonates with them the next year. Just reminds them like, oh, okay, this is why they wear them.
Yeah, one more thing, Carrie, on this slide. We're just going back and forth here. Yeah, so right, our girls did not get those books. So I actually made a book for Dahlia. And I think one thing that's important that we do as parents, and we want to make sure that all the adults at school do, is that our child is not just their hearing loss. Our child is much more. It's an important part, and it defines a lot of things, and there's a lot of other things. And so I put in the book, I like soccer, and these are other things that I like. And then check out my cool, pink sparkly ear molds. But I have to say, Dahlia did not want to present the book to her class. That's who she is. She's very shy. And so if that's your child, that's okay too. Dahlia's classroom, they all know she has hearing loss. They get it. And they get it partially from the teacher, partially from her. They did not get it from a presentation. And so like, even if you have a shy child like me, like the class can still get it. And I just hope that at least the book made Dahlia feel more comfortable, in her own skin, even if she didn't want to share. So there's lots of different ways that your kids can do and accomplish kind of the same thing.
I like that you made your own book. That's great. There are some great resources online as well for that. Um, there's one that I really like from, what is that called? My Battle Call by Valley Gideons. She has a great one that you can share with coaches, that I really like. Okay, so issues. Okay, now related services. So related services are things that you talk about at the IEP meeting and you discuss how many minutes you're going to get of the different services that your child would need, including speech therapy, a hearing itinerant. It could be OT, PT, social work. There's many different things that you could have for your child. And so I think you both were talking a little bit about this. How is your relationship with your child's support staff? Um, did you have an in-service before your child entered the school? Why don't we start with that and then we'll go to the other two questions.
Remembering back to Molly's foggy because Molly and Dahlia were the COVID kids at Child's Voice, so we abruptly ended. So I think we did an in-service via Zoom with some CV and some Madison Elementary faculty. We talked about it. I remember it more so with Bo because it was more, I think we were in person and I knew more of the faculty at that time. But yeah, I think just advocating, being on the same page with Child's Voice before you go to that meeting is essential because Child's Voice is going to be your voice in that meeting. You need to have a one-on-one with Carrie, or I don't know the new gentleman's name now, or now that Anna's gone, I don't know all the new names, guys, so I apologize. But having that pre-meeting with them, say, hey, this is where we want to go in this meeting, and here's how I need you to support me, because they know the right way to go about it. Me, I'm going to go in a bowl, like a china shop, right, where they're going to be a little more tactful and PC about it. But I think it's just knowing that you're on the same page with Child's Voice and them advocating to the school of what you want, talking about like minutes and stuff. Like, Bo was my kid. Do we Main Street him this year? Do we not? He was implanted later in life than Molly. Separate. I don't know if anyone else on here has two kids with hearing loss. I do. I had to separate them. This was Molly. This is not who I'm talking about today. This is Bo, and this is who I'm advocating for now. And with him being on that fence, it's like, oh, do I not? I was very, and it became a very emotional meeting. You know, because I just want the best for my kiddo. But I think me knowing he was on the fence and Child's Voice helped me, we went for as many minutes we possibly could. And I think the most you can get, go for it, because it's harder to add on later than in the beginning. You can always take minutes off. It's going to be a heck of a lot harder to add minutes on. So if you're on that fence, or if you think your school district's going to be difficult now, they're going to be more difficult moving down in the future to add stuff on. That's something I think an alumni parent told me early on with Molly. You can always, you can't add on, it's gonna be harder, but it's easier to take them off. So, assess every year, do we need this? Okay, do we not? Take it off then. But go for as much as you can and be on the same page, get Child's Voice in your corner and advocate and talk and have that pre-meeting.
Yeah, and I think not just about minutes as much as you can, but also listing out the accommodations, every single thing that you can put on there
Yeah.
because, I was lucky, my school district just took every accommodation that Child's Voice had and that Child's Voice recommended. Really, and I say Child's Voice recommended because I was there and I agreed, but, they really knew what should be recommended. And I was, more than happy to take their recommendations. And so I remember Dahlia's teacher, Mr. Mitch, saying like, this is something, like adding a testing requirement on. A little first grader doesn't need testing breaks. But, to Katie's point, he said, in the future, she's going to need it. So let's get it in now. And it got in and it stayed in. And so, really everything that Child's Voice suggested from the very beginning got into our IEP and has stayed there because, again, what's in there is easier to stay. We also ended up with a lot of minutes, both with speech and with hearing itinerant. We had more for hearing itinerant. and they both have dropped down over time, but that's a much easier thing to do. I will say about that, I remember Dahlia went down in speech like most drastically in third grade. So as your kiddo gets older, then it's nice to be able to have that option to cut back because you started strong. And I remember her teachers saying, as you get older, when you miss out on classwork, it affects more. And
Mhm.
so you want to miss out more in the beginning when the academics don't matter as much, and you get those foundations, and then you have the flexibility to drop down. And so I think that was something helpful that I learned as well.
And then also, this popped in my head. Even if Child's Voice is recommending something to be in there now and you don't really get it, just go with them. There was one thing that they every year you'll go in for your IEP and they read all this stuff off. Okay, right. There's one thing this year they read off, and Molly's in fourth grade, and her teacher is like, "Wait a minute, that's going to affect this day." There was something in there about static electricity and how a lot of static electricity can be very harmful to the kiddos' devices. Well, in fourth grade in our school district, they do this huge static electricity day. It's all they do. They bring this scientist in. The kids have a blast with it. Molly couldn't be in the room. I didn't even think twice about it. And I'm glad her teacher caught it. She's like, "Oh, well, we have Mr. Lee that comes in fourth and fifth grade." And she goes, "Well, we can pull Molly from the day, but she's only going to be doing this or that." So we ended up just taking Molly out of school that day, and her and I had a fun day because she had to miss out on that. So again, I didn't even think about that. I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. In first grade and second grade and third grade popped up in fourth grade. So I'm glad I had it on there that they recognized it, because I honestly don't know if I would have even thought about that sending her in for that fun science day, what prior to them saying that in the meeting.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I'm gonna scribble that down. Okay. Let's see, what were the other ones? Have the minutes changed, and how have your child's IEP goals changed over time? Because very often you'll transition to the mainstream and you'll have all of the goals that we write,
Mhm.
and then as soon as you get there, they'll make an like a IEP update kind of thing within the first couple months, and they typically will write goals the way that they write them for their district. Did that happen to you?
Not for us. I think we're pretty lucky that our hearing itinerant has worked with Child's Voice in the past and
Mhm.
Child's Voice grad. So I'm probably lucky in that factor. But again, and this kind of goes back to your first point, I have a really good relationship with my hearing itinerant. So we always kind of have a pre-meeting before these, like, do you want anything to change? Kind of like we did with Child's Voice. We talk about, does Molly, does Bo need less? We like Molly's, some of her stuff has gone down, just to what Alex said, is you don't necessarily want to take them out of the core classes as much as they were in first grade, where it wasn't, I don't want to say as important, but now they're missing a lot of group work and they're missing some core stuff that Molly then has to make up with her hearing itinerant. And there's some socialization parts of that as well. So I think we have changed minutes a little bit. I don't think we've taken accommodations off as much. We've re-stressed accommodations. Molly, we noticed her hearing itinerant kind of reach out to me that she was at one point this year kind of pushing away having her FM in the middle of a cluster. I think she was getting a little more sensitive to it. And we talked about it. We got back on the same page. And ironically, she was going to see her audiologist that day. And so I kind of sent her a text like, you know, ask Molly, because I know if I bring it up, then say, Mom, stop, don't. So like she brought it up. So it's kind of reinforcing some of those accommodations on it and talking about the importance of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think having other adults like, on your child's team is really important. Um, you know, and building that good relationship and the stability, if you can, that's not something we have control over necessarily, of whether we get the same itinerants. That is something like our school has 2 different speech therapists. And so, we do request every year that we get the same one to be on our team. We only have 1 itinerant, and so that's the one we get. But, for example, our librarian was reading a story about a girl with or a child with devices, and she said, oh, just like Dahlia's hearing aids. And Dahlia has no problem with her aids, but she didn't like that reference. I think also her shyness, but she didn't tell me about that, and she told the itinerant about it. And to me, that's fine. It's okay. It's important for our kids to be able to go to other adults and ask for help from other trusted adults. And so I was really pleased that she felt comfortable with the itinerants. I would say one thing that's changed about our itinerant minutes, those haven't gone down as much, but now Dahlia just gets pulled out once a week, but the itinerant pushes in twice a week. So the minutes have changed from pull out to push in. So the itinerant is coming to observe. And that, for my shy little girl, this might not be necessary for Molly, but for Dahlia, it's really important. So I think it was last year the itinerant noticed that Dahlia was having some trouble with group work. And so she was the one who checked it out and asked those comprehension questions, not the yes, no questions, but the comprehension questions, and found out that Dahlia was not getting everything. So she actually got the school district to order a pass around mic that goes on the table. So the teacher still has her FM on, but then there's a mic that goes on the desk. And, Dahlia actually, for a while, she would only use it if she was working with her best friend. If she wasn't with her best friend, she didn't want to use it. And so, we would talk, again, offline, like Katie's saying, not necessarily waiting for that IEP meeting, but to be in touch with the itinerants. And so the itinerant will email me an update, or I'll ask about it. And so then the teacher would do things like put Dahlia in a group with her best friend and another person. And it's okay to ask for things like that, because it's not about my daughter wants to sit with her best friend. No, it's that my daughter needs to feel comfortable in order to, advocate for herself. And so we do, and I've even asked for my daughter to be with her best friend the next year, or, one of 2 or 3 others, because that helps. And the school does it because they understand that it's not just like somebody wants a friend. It's that this is how she's best able to access everything that she needs.
Yeah, good point.
That's an excellent idea. And
I
most schools
also
are
have
not
done
allowed. Go ahead, what?
I was just going to say, I also, I was just looking at one of our IEPs. I've also said things like, Dahlia does best with a really engaging, warm, friendly teacher that she can really connect with. And I've done things like, so I name kind of the attributes of the teacher, and then I say, actually, like the teacher from this year, Dahlia would really do well with a teacher, similar to this. And she's actually gotten kind of similar teachers along the way that she responds really well to and can work well with. And so that's something I also tried to get into the IEP. You can always ask. They might not give it to you, but there's no reason not to ask for that kind of stuff if your child needs it.
Yeah, that's great. Because you can't always say, this is the teacher I want, but it's all about giving the attributes of a structured teacher, a teacher that gives good directions, a teacher that has had experience with another child with a hearing loss, or knows how to use an FM system. Those are really important things. Okay. Oh, accommodations. Okay, I think we already talked about that. So what are the most important accommodations, do you think, to have on your child's IEP? I mean, besides that list that we have on our audiology reports that we present at IEPs, Dr. Dawn's list that I think probably Dr. Page is still using. What what do you think are the most important accommodations?
Well, we actually, so Mr. Mitch, is he still at Child's Voice, Carrie?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So everyone knows he's deaf in one ear and is implanted. And first of all, I love that for Dahlia. And I want to say that I think that that was like such a beautiful part of Child's Voice experience for my daughter, is just getting this community, because now she comes to our mainstream school and there's only one other little boy with hearing aids, nobody with implants. And so just having teachers and all of the kids, I think really just was so good for her. But so he was her teacher when we mainstreamed, and he said, make sure to put in listening breaks. And that was like from his own experience, and as his experience as a teacher, so both things are very valuable. And so we always make sure that it's not just breaks during testing, it's breaks during the day. And my daughter actually doesn't really need them right now, but I keep it on there because I think as the academics get more intense, I think she will need those listening breaks where she just needs to go step out into the hall and have a moment. So I think that's always a really good one that I always check for.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think all of these here on the screen are very important. They're all on ours, and I know they are all used in my kids' classrooms. And all the teachers know about it, and I think that's great. But the listening one, I think, is a really good one. Sometimes you just need that break. I can see it with my kids when they come home sometimes after a long day of school, is plus activities or over the weekends. Like they just need to go in a quiet room and just take a minute. It's so different to see it from my two not non-hearing, but my implanted kids versus my hearing kid. Where he does, I mean, he's 5 and crazy, but he doesn't need it as much as those two do. I can just see it in their face sometimes. And as Molly's getting older, it's getting more challenging. There's not as much free fun play, that sometimes she just needs it. And this past summer, actually, one of Molly's implants wasn't working very well. So we had to have another surgery, have it taken out and put a new one in. And there was a lot of conversation of going into the school year of, we're still strengthening that ear. Here's things that she needs to be doing, taking the other one off during some of these activities to really strengthen that one. It's not on our IEP because that's not the way it was written, but we have that conversation with our hearing itinerant and our teacher. Just because something might not be in the IEP, but because of this special circumstance that we had this summer, she's like, I get it, I understand it, I'll work with you on it. So that's, sometimes when it's not just on it and it's just like, a short-term type thing, just talk to them about it.
I would say one other thing, it's really helpful if you can, to go in person, particularly at the beginning of the school year, particularly for that first conference, and make sure you see where your child sits, because our school is cognizant of the fan and the window and the hallway door. But it's always good to go in and actually see, because after several different conferences, then I've emailed the teacher to say, like, I'm not sure about this placements, and one time they actually came back and said, oh well, we talked to the itinerant about this and we think this is the best because of this thing. And I was like, okay, well then that makes sense. But it's really nice to get in there yourself and check out um, some of the classroom conditions that your child is dealing with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We have in the beginning of the school year, it's a meet and greet where you drop off the school supplies, or, we do the ones that are ordered. And so you kind of like go with your child to the classroom and figure it all out. But just to kind of see the lay of the land. Okay, this is where they're gonna be. Here's how the classroom's set up. And our hearing aid has always met us there on those nights, which is nice. But also like maybe even if you can, if your school still allows it, I this year for the first time went and volunteered in the classroom for one of the I did the Christmas program and the Valentine's Day. And mainly I got guilted in because, Mom, you're never there. Well, I'm okay, I'm sorry, I work. But it was really nice for me to go in and see them interact with the kids. And like it was really cool to see one of the room moms talking about, all right, here's the craft we're gonna do. And my second grader went up, got his FM from the teacher and went and gave it to that parent. He doesn't know this parent, well, he knows his parent, but not very well. But he knew to go get it and give it to her because she was giving special instructions. And it was a proud moment for me. And so it was nice to like not be there like, oh, what are they doing? It was a fun. They didn't necessarily think I was there to like, you know, check up on them, but it was not, it was a nice thing to see how they're doing in a fun environment there.
Those are really good tips. I like those. Because when I go out and I observe our alumni, the first thing I do look at is where are they sitting?
Mhm.
And that's almost always something that I make a comment on. He's too close to the ventilation unit, or this I had one kid this year who was facing the door and the majority of his class was behind him, so he couldn't even watch them when they were talking. And so those are things that I think about, but that doesn't mean that the mainstream teachers are thinking about that at all when they set up their room. So, and the other good thing is, as the kids get older, they're able to say, this seat doesn't work for me. Can you pick a different one? Or can I pick a different one? Because I really want to be able to see everyone, or I'm not close enough to hear you. So, um, and volunteering. It's always great to go in and see your kid participating with other kids, or seeing how the staff is using the FM. Does the teacher hand the FM off to other kids? So there's so many things that you're able to see when you go in yourself and see the classroom. Good tips. Very good. Okay. Advocacy. I think you've both talked about how you've advocated for your child, how you've gone in there and found an appropriate way to say, this is what my child needs, instead of being accusatory, more, this is what I know my child needs. How can we give it to my child, kind of thing. Can you think of any other times you've advocated for your child besides the ones you've commented on?
So I'm going to take a different spin. It's not me. It's more teaching moments with Molly and Bo, you know, making sure, and they've learned a lot of this at Child's Voice of, you know, how to advocate for themselves, but reminding them in certain situations when they come home, well, this happened, or, you know, or even I had this issue with this person. They said this about my implants. It's like, well, what should your response be? How can you better, you know, do this or that? So it's talking not only just about our own advocating for our kids, but it's also talking to the kids about advocating for themselves and doing it in the right, appropriate way. Because I know my fourth grader Molly, she can get snippy sometimes. Shocking, she's my daughter, but it's like, well, let's say that a little bit nicer. You know, she had an issue with a kid a couple years ago, and it wasn't the friendliest, and we had to get some people involved in the school. But I did that from my side. But how are you going to work with kids or situations at school better? So I think it's also just not even when the situation presents itself, just kind of throughout some family dinners. How was school? We always do like, what was your favorite part of the day? Or, you know, and just in those conversations, things get brought up. So, oh, okay, well, what could we have done better? You know, how could you have told your teacher differently? Or how could you have told your hearing itinerant, I needed this when I didn't have something? So I think it's having that routine conversation about, you know, small kids are getting bigger, bigger kids have bigger problems, bigger advocate things. So addressing it earlier on. I'm sorry. So just kind of just having those friendly conversations, not when I don't want to say bad or negative things present itself, just you know, in the moment type advocate conversations.
Yeah, I totally agree, Katie. And there's this is also a bit off, but very relevant. And I still remember from a parent panel that I saw a long time ago, where the parents were saying their children were deaf and implanted, and they were saying that they wanted to really make sure that their children were included. So if there was like a new movie to be shown, like they would show the movie at their house, and they could make sure that then the sound was, appropriate, and everything was going to work for the kids. And so, and I really liked the way that they just like framed their kids' hearing loss for the kids and for the friends. And so the way that I think about it in terms of my daughter is, trying to find those friendships that I know are going to be really good friendships. And so there was a little girl at the park who has since become a very good friend who had only seen Dahlia on Zoom at school, and then said, "Oh, what's that in your ear?" Because they actually hadn't seen her hearing aids on Zoom. And I was like, and so I kind of walked over to like hear what was going on, and she was like, "Those are great. I love that color of your ear molds." And I was like, "Oh, this kid, I want to be friends with this kid."
Mhm.
And there are times when Dahlia does not need another advocate. She can do it by herself. But there are times when it helps to have somebody there who's on your side and who might say something. Who might just answer the question, or like, "Oh, those are Dahlia's hearing aids. What's the big deal?" Um, and so making sure that your friend has those strong friendships, is another just really helpful thing, I think. And actually, I've heard that now. Another also I forget, it was a guide by your side, like Mom's Night In, that I went to. But so I think that that's a theme that I keep hearing from parents who feel like their kids are really successful. Is the self advocacy that I learned from Child's Voice and that we reinforce, but also finding and maintaining those strong friendships.
Yep.
Okay. And then moving on to self-advocacy skills that I think you've also talked about as well. Did your child's skills carry over to the mainstream? What skills did your child learn in the mainstream?
I mean, I feel like they all carried over. I mean, troubleshooting with devices. They started that early on. Um, at Child's Voice, I mean, I feel like there's so many things that Child's Voice helped me do that I'd sometimes had to learn, or not help Molly do, that I sometimes had to learn to do on my own, because like, well, she's doing it. How did you do that? Um, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, all of Molly's carried on. I don't think she lost anything. Because they know that usually the year, okay, this kid's gonna probably mainstream this year. So they take more attention and special attention to some of the things that they're gonna have to learn into the new school, whether it be devices, social skills, all of that. That's things that they just work on all year with them outside just, regular academics. I don't know. I'm struggling to think of what she learned in the mainstream. I don't know. Alex, do you have anything?
I do actually, and so like Molly, very similar for Dahlia. She was so good about troubleshooting and the FM and getting it and taking it back, and she's always been complimented by her mainstream teachers, like, "Oh, she does such a great job with the FM." But I will say, there's just been some like funky times where she's like had a dead battery and not reported it, or not, like if she ran out in her backpack, she didn't ask for another one, and I'm like, this is really surprising. I'm not sure what's going on here. Or one day with her hearing aid, she needs to have a little boot receiver on the hearing aid to connect to the FM, and she somehow had brought it home and left it at home, and then she didn't tell anybody that day, you know and I was like, this is so weird and unlike what she's learned. But the reason I tell this story is that, first of all, kids have off days, and so to know that your kid will have an off day, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that she forgot her self advocacy skills or whatever. But what was really great about that is that one time the hearing itinerant brought it up to me, one time I brought it up to them, and the whole team kind of got together, the speech therapist, the itinerant, the teacher, and they had a plan, and then they worked with her on it, they reported back to me. And so and then very quickly, then it wasn't an issue anymore. So who knows what it was, just probably a kid being a kid. But it was really great to see the team kind of jump into action and respond and kind of solve the problem. So I would say that's Child's Voice, um, plus most of what you learn at Child's Voice, and then plus a little bit of help from her
You
mainstream.
know, it's not
team.
necessarily like advocate skill, but one thing we've had to do, you know, Molly more so than Bo, but Molly will go from school sometimes right to her dance studio. She competes competitively for dance, and she'll have to have a battery change. We don't necessarily want her necessarily be changing at dance in the middle of dance. So we have a set time for each Molly and Bo for them. We have a charging rack at school, and they bring extra batteries. And the wallet that we got when our Medell kit, that's at say 1 o'clock every day. They both change their batteries at 1 o'clock. But we also have a checklist on their desk. Bring battery wallet home. Take off your FM sleeves, because sometimes they'll forget to take off the FM sleeves that are supposed to stay at school. And like just like a little bit of the thing. So like that's something we've had to implement at school.
The checklist is always a good idea.
Because I mean, let's be real. I can only remind them so many times, but I got to remember they're fourth and second grade. I forget things at my own office. But like there was a weekend, Friday night, I'm out with friends and I'm getting text messages from my babysitter's phone with Molly texting me, "Mom, don't be mad. Don't be mad." I'm like, what happened? What happened? She's like, "I forgot my batteries at school." I'm like, so like, and we've lost batteries, and I'm like, Molly, we're waiting for new ones to come in. I'm like, we're down to a few now. So we had to email the principal. He came out that next Saturday at 8:30 in the morning. He let Molly in, and we talked to her, and my husband went with her, walked her up to school, and we made her apologize for coming out on a Saturday. This is not going to happen again. And that's when we implemented the checklist.
Oh man, yeah, that's hard.
Well, and that's great.
think
And I'm sure she never forgot again, right? Because she understood what was at stake, and then you gave her the tool to help. So she desires to not repeat the mistake, but you also need a tool, and then so you gave her the tool. So that's great.
Yeah. And we always remind them, and Anna taught our kids this, you're the boss of your hearing loss.
We give our kids shirts now that say I'm the boss of my hearing loss.
Bo has one.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay. So preparing for the mainstream. How did you prepare? What should parents do? What advice do you give to parents who are mainstreaming in the fall?
I mean, I think Child's Voice does such a good job of doing a lot of this on their own. One thing that we did that was really helpful was got to know the faculty at the school. We knew Child's Voice. I knew everyone there. I mean, I can walk in and talk to everyone. And I didn't know it at Madison. So with Molly entering her first year, it was COVID year, so they didn't do the whole meet and greet. But I contacted the principal and said, "I understand you're not doing meet and greet, and I understand why. Molly doesn't know the school. Can I schedule some time?" So the principal came in, school secretary came in, the hearing itinerant came in, and her teacher came in. And we walked her around the school just so she could see where it was and where her classroom was. But I think knowing the principal, knowing your hearing itinerant, speech teachers, social workers, and that secretary, man, they know everything about that school. Become friends with the secretary. But I think really having direct line of communication to every and anyone that you are going to need to at that school in a friendly, nice way. And don't overuse it or abuse it. But just so you know who you need to talk to and when, and you guys have that relationship. That's been very, very beneficial for us.
Yeah, I think I've already, talked several things about this, but I would say I think it was new to me that like the speech therapist was the one who ran our IEP. I guess I kind of thought it would be our hearing itinerant, but it's the speech therapist for us anyway, who schedules the IEP meeting, who sends out the documents, and so we had a transition between speech therapists, and so I actually had to email and say it's getting time to schedule our meeting, and to again with the open line of communication that Katie mentioned, don't be shy. They need to, that's something that's extremely basic, scheduling the IEP. So they have to comply with that, and so you certainly should feel empowered to do that. But even the other little things, I think, yeah, it's really great to meet those folks, and make sure that you're all on part of the same team.
Case. So I'm sorry. I was trying to think of what I was going to say. I'm sorry. So find out who the case manager is.
Yep.
Is what you're saying. Because yes, that changes from district to district. You actually, when I'm contacting schools, I never know who that person is.
Yeah.
And so that is good information to have. Who should your point of contact be?
Yep.
I'm sorry. I was getting there. All right. Okay. Oh, I guess that's it. All right. Do you have any other last tidbits before I open the floor for questions?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think, have that direct line of communication. Seek help when you feel it's needed. Reach back out to Child's Voice as you need. There was times that I would reach back out like, should this be happening? Should this not be happening? They are still always going to be, not even just Carrie, but everyone else's Child's Voice is always going to be a direct line of communication for you. I have spent a lot of time at Child's Voice, having 2 children there. From Molly was in EI when she was 18 months. So just always know that they're there for you. And they're not just going to abandon you in a new school.
Yeah, ditto to what Katie said.
Yes, we're always there. Please always reach out. We're always.
And as you do graduate, don't close the door on alumni get-togethers or golf outings or the fall fundraisers. We always still go to them. I think it's important for the kids to get to see each other again because they did have such a special bond. Like Alex has said, Molly and Bo are the only kids in Child's Voice that have implants. Not even anyone else with hearing aids. So it is nice for them to see their other peers again. Not that they're alone, but oh yeah, there are other kids just like me.
Okay. Those are all really good. Okay. So for anyone who's attending this, do you have any questions? You can turn your camera and your mic on so you can ask a question, or you can put it in the chat if you want.
Any questions about like activities or sports?
Yes, because I was just going to say, I'll just say something about sports. So my daughter plays soccer, and it's been fine. She doesn't use an FM when she plays sports. That same little girl from the park who said, "Oh, what about your hearing aids? I love your color." Several years later on the team said, "Dahlia, do we need a signal for, if I'm going to tell you something?" And Dahlia was like, "No, I think we don't need a signal." And I was like, "I love this kid who's asking my daughter what she needs." And then my daughter who's, feeling confident, like, "Actually, I don't need anything right now." So like, it was a great interaction. But soccer and some other sports you play in the rain, and so that always stressed me out. So there would be days, when I would have Dahlia put her raincoat on underneath. I think it may not have been necessary, like hearing aids can get a little bit wet, but Dahlia just transitioned to kind of adult style hearing aids that are, it's called receiver in the ear. And so it's a teeny tiny little thing. You can't see a mold anymore. She was actually bummed about not being able to choose her mold colors anymore. And I was like, well, we'll just put stickers on your hearing aids. Don't worry. But those now are waterproof. We won't swim in them. I don't want to test them that much. But, for those days when it's raining heavily at her soccer game, like I'm excited for these new hearing aids. But yeah, she hasn't really had a problem at all in soccer. Sometimes I will tell the coach, like lower your voice, to a lower octave, which she can hear better. She can hear better the lower pitch voices. So if she's not responding, lower your voice, call her name again, wait till she looks at you. And so sometimes, I'll give the coach that coaching. I also have coached myself. And so, for example, one time the team was getting ready to vote on a team name, and all the girls had different ideas, and I could tell Dahlia, like, she wasn't voting. And so I was like, oh, let's write down all the names. And so I made it visual for her. The same thing that happens in a classroom. And then she looked, and then, and then she did vote. And so it turned out it was a hearing thing. And in that moment, she didn't know. Sometimes you don't know what you're missing, or she didn't want to bring it up. And so, it's nice that I have the time to be able to be involved in that extracurricular and kind of help navigate some of those hearing things.
Yeah, that's great. Giving the coach heads up, because a lot of times they have not coached kiddos with hearing loss. So just like in baseball, like when they're in the outfield, if you're not wearing the FM, they're not going to hear. You got wind, you got other games going on. There's a lot of other distractions and hearing obstacles. So giving them those expectations, he or she might not hear you as great in the outfield. If anyone's worrying about helmets, we've done hockey, we've done baseball. We've felt, because with our kids with the implants, for the boys, and even Molly when she played, they're like Nike ski caps. Like just putting that over, it kind of stabilizes them a little bit more. With the helmets, it can be really difficult, like stretching them out to put on. I mean, it can be difficult, but having them put their hands over their implants a little bit, and as that helmet comes on, they're gradually taking them off. Practice, 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 because you never want to do it for the first time or the first couple times at a game or a practice where there's other kids around, like, oh, I got to go back. So practicing that at home, I think, has been really helpful to us.
Those are great ideas. We're going to do a sports panel in the fall. And so maybe your kids could be on the panel and share their ideas with us. Because I always have parents asking me questions. Are there any other questions for the panel?
I have a question. Hey, Peggy here. I've got a little almost 4-year-old at Child's Voice. Just curious, now that you guys have been out of this for a few years, is there anything that you would change or do differently looking back on your situation mainstreaming? Like, I think I would have left her at Child's Voice another year because they're so great, or I'm just trying to think outside the box, because sometimes I always have these thoughts like, oh, you know what, if I would have done that, looking back, I always think if I would have done this a little bit differently. So I'm just curious, both your perspectives of, is there anything that you feel like you changed, like you would change looking back, or do you feel like, gosh, everything went so well, Child's Voice was perfect, the transition was perfect, just curious your thoughts on that.
So Molly was ready to go. She was ready to transition. Bo was my one that I was really, really on the fence. He was part of the COVID years at Child's Voice. He was implanted a little bit later because his hearing loss got profoundly worse. So, but I'm going to say no, because I trusted my gut, and I think you just don't second guess yourself when you are on the fence and you're going to go with your gut. Got to trust yourself and trust in the team that's going to support you. And I said this before, just get on the same page. Like, all right, I'm going to do this. I really need you to support me in our decision, like my family's decision, and go for the most minutes or, in things that you can put in there. But I don't think there's anything I would change, because I see my kids now and they're thriving. There's always going to be challenges, right?
Mm-hmm.
In any kid's academic, hearing, hard of hearing, there's always going to be challenges, and they're different challenges for different kids. But I mean, no, I wouldn't change anything. And I feel like, maybe could he have done a little bit better with a couple more months, but I don't think he needed that whole year. And that's where I struggled with it. So I'm going to say no. And I feel we did the best thing for Bo, and I see he's the happiest and he's doing well. We do see a tutor for both of our kids. They see a tutor once a week just for some stuff that they might lose out on, and times they're getting pulled out for some minutes here and there, and just to catch up on some of those things. Like I'm not saying Child's Voice hasn't done great in all aspects, but I don't know if it's my kid thing. They've always struggled with math. The way math was taught at Child's Voice is really different from the way our school it has their curriculum, and that's okay. So we started tutoring almost immediately. Oh no, we waited about a year because COVID year. But just find ways, like, where if you think your kids are missing out on a little bit here or there, there's always different ways to, like, kind of increase stuff outside of the school to help it?
Yeah, I would say for us, we initially were wondering if we should mainstream my daughter for kindergarten, and we did not. We kept her at kindergarten at Child's Voice and mainstreamed her for first grade. And her best friend mainstreamed for kindergarten a year before. And so, we were thinking about, we thought academically Dahlia was really ready because Child's Voice prepares them so well. But we weren't sure, we thought about, with her being shy and the self-advocacy skills, that's really why we kept her in Child's Voice for kindergarten. And that was totally the right decision. I'm so glad we did that. I think it really served her well. And I have to say, also with COVID, it messed things up, but we never felt a problem coming into the school district a year late. Because we worried about that, is she going to feel different or left out? And, we don't know because of COVID, but I have no doubt that it was the right thing to do to leave her at Child's Voice for one more year to get that confidence and self-advocacy.
That's great feedback. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time and all of your insight. I took lots of notes, so.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, feel free to reach out anytime.
Yeah, Carrie,
Awesome.
feel free to provide my email or cell phone.
Okay.
Yeah, same.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Good luck, Peggy.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you both so much for everything you said. I took a million notes and I'm going to try and sum it up somehow in my e-newsletter. Maybe I'll make that multiple months because there's so many different things that you said, but you guys are excellent advocates for your kids. And I really appreciate your time sharing with our parents. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate you, Carrie. We appreciate Child's Voice. All right. Good
Yeah,
luck
you guys
to
are in the
everyone.
best place
Thank you.
possible. Child's Voice is great.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.